The morning sun poured through my kitchen window, casting delicate patterns across the linoleum floor. The scent of fresh coffee mingled with the earthy aroma drifting from the garden just beyond the glass. My garden, a sanctuary of colors and life, where bees hummed poetic sonnets among the blossoms and butterflies danced their intricate ballet. Each plant, a brushstroke in nature's painting, was chosen with the care one might reserve for family heirlooms. Across the street, the white shutters of Karen's house clapped shut with military precision. Her lawn, a manicured expanse of green, lay like an obedient soldier at attention, while my own yard spilled over with joyful chaos. It was this very chaos that troubled Karen, the self-declared monarch of the HOA, whose word clung to the neighborhood like a persistent fog. Her first salvos were subtle, yet unmistakable. A raised brow at the monthly meetings when garden topics blossomed, her voice a sharpened tool carving disdain into the minutes. But her real artistry lay in her notes. Precision-crafted missives slipped under doors, pointing barbed fingers at perceived infractions. My garden, she claimed, was a disruption, a breach of uniformity. And when she broached the subject of voting against it at the next HOA gathering, her proposal was wrapped in language as sweet as arsenic-laced chocolate. It was not the first time my choices had met with disapproval. Yet this felt different, a personal crusade disguised as community duty. I wondered if she noticed the tiny creatures that made my garden their refuge, their microscopic lives unfolding amidst the petals. Karen's world, I imagined, was devoid of such appreciation, where order reigned supreme and nature was a spectacle best observed from behind a screen. The morning of the vote arrived, heralded by a sky brushed with gentle blues. I attended the meeting with a calm exterior, my resolve tucked neatly into the folds of a linen jacket. As the proposal to restrict my garden's exuberance was tabled, I listened with a stillness, born not of resignation, but of quiet anticipation. Her arguments landed with practiced precision, each word a pebble meant to stir the waters of conformity. Yet I found myself unmoved, anchored by an idea that had taken root in my mind. As the vote was cast, the room held its breath, expectation mingling with the aroma of stale coffee. The outcome, a narrow victory for her cause, was met with a murmur of polite regret, eyes flickering towards me in a dance of sympathy. I left the meeting room with a gentle smile curving my lips, the kind that knows secrets yet to be spoken. Karen's victory was but a seed of its own, destined to blossom into something unexpected. As I stepped into the sunlight, the warmth on my face mirrored the quiet fire within. A plan had already begun to unfurl, delicate yet defiant like the first bloom of spring. The next few days were spent in preparation. I researched with the diligence of a historian, my fingers tracing words on pages that spoke of eco-friendly practices and habitats that fostered life's tiny architects. A certification, I discovered, awaited those willing to blend nature with nurture. A pollinator habitat designation from a reputable organization. My garden would become an official refuge protected by a title as formidable as any HOA mandate. Karen's campaign against my garden had sown more than discord. It had planted the seed of a cunning idea, one that would soon transform her victory into an ironic twist of fate. As I mailed the application, I imagined the bees murmuring their approval, and the butterflies swirling in silent applause. What had begun as a simple garden was about to become a testament to resilience, a thriving testament to the quiet power of nature and those who cherish it. The morning sun poured through my kitchen window, casting long shadows over the yellowing letter from the HOA. My garden's fate had already been sealed by Karen's vote, but she wasn't content with victory. No, she aimed to escalate. The letter, a pristine white, was a declaration of war. The language was as flowery as it was absurd, listing new rules that read like satire. Grass no taller than 3 inches, garden beds no wider than 4 feet. My tomatoes, standing defiantly at 5 feet, were suddenly rogue outlaws in their own soil. As I sipped my coffee, the bitter taste matched the scene outside. Karen, in her pastel tracksuit and perpetual scowl, patrolled the neighborhood like a self-appointed sheriff. Her eyes, ever watchful, scanned lawns for infractions, her notebook ready to document perceived slights against the suburban order. Word spread swiftly. Gossip on Karen's lips traveled faster than a summer storm. Neighbors whispered about my garden's demise, their glances oscillating between sympathy and schadenfreude. Karen's narrative was gospel for some, her tales of my unruly wilderness transforming into whispers of community blight. The mailbox became a vessel of dread, each letter heavier than the last. Citations for trivialities arrived like clockwork, a rake left by the fence, a rogue dandelion. Each fine was a feather on the scale, tipping the balance towards absurdity. I kept them all, a testament to Karen's campaign. In the midst of this bureaucratic blitzkrieg, I tended to my garden. My hands moved with the rhythm of resilience, planting seeds of defiance amidst the chaos. I found solace in the soil, where Karen's reach couldn't extend. The bees and butterflies flitted about, indifferent to human squabbles. A reminder that nature flourished beyond the confines of petty rules. Karen, of course, remained relentless. Her tactics grew more brazen, her whispers louder. At the community picnic, she spun tales of my garden's supposed danger, her voice dripping with feigned concern. Her audience nodded along, some eager to belong, others fearing her ire. I watched from a distance, the scene both comical and tragic. Adults reduced to schoolyard politics, swayed by the loudest voice rather than the truest. The irony was not lost on me. Here was a community, pitched as idyllic and harmonious, splintering under the weight of trivialities. Yet, amidst the absurdity, an idea germinated. Karen had underestimated me. She saw my garden as a battlefield, a place to assert dominance. I saw it as a refuge, a sanctuary. And so, with quiet determination, I crafted my plan, the ultimate riposte. I gathered the necessary forms, filled them with precision, and submitted them without fanfare. The process was as tedious as it was empowering, each step a silent rebellion against the status quo. Certification as a pollinator habitat was no small feat, but I reveled in the irony it would bring. Now, I wait for the moment when Karen's crusade crumbles under the weight of her own machinations. Because in this war of wills, the victor is not the loudest, but the one who lets nature take its course. The news spread slowly at first, like a quiet wind that rustles the leaves before a storm. The sign, freshly minted and gleaming under the sun's merciless gaze, stood defiantly at the neighborhood's entrance. It read, "Certified Pollinator Habitat," its letters bold and unapologetic. The bees had won their small victory, and so had I. Karen, with her perpetual frown and ever-watchful eyes, was the first to notice. Her morning ritual, a brisk walk with her pristine poodle, had led her directly past the sign. Her stride faltered, just enough for me to notice from my garden, where I gently coaxed the morning glories to bloom. She paused, perhaps hoping that by sheer will alone, the letters might rearrange themselves into something more palatable. They did not. The neighborhood, usually a place of manicured monotony, began to buzz with unspoken curiosity. Conversations at the mailbox lingered longer. Eyes darted to my garden, once a source of contention, now a burgeoning sanctuary for bees, butterflies, and the occasional curious child who dared to wander too close. The colors of my garden seemed to burn brighter under the scrutiny, vibrant petals unfurling like defiant flags in the face of order. Tensions simmered beneath the surface. Karen's response was inevitable, like the buildup of pressure before a geyser's eruption. She had always been the self-appointed guardian of the neighborhood's integrity, her judgments swift and often severe. Yet now, in quiet defiance, the earth itself sided with me. The buzzing of bees, once a gentle hum, became a symphony of resistance. I could see it in the way she spoke to others, her words clipped and brittle. Discontent was her armor, but it was starting to crack. Her allies, those who had once nodded in agreement at her every decree, began to falter in their allegiance. After all, who could argue against the butterflies fluttering through the air like living confetti? Each day the garden grew wilder and more wonderful. The plants, having sensed their victory, stretched towards the sun with renewed vigor. Lavender spilled over the sidewalk, its fragrance a subtle taunt to those who once called it unruly. Sunflowers stood sentinel, their faces following the light as if to mock the shadows gathering in Karen's heart. I watched from my window as she gathered her council, the last bastion of her authority. They huddled at the corner, casting glances towards my oasis. Their murmurs were carried away by the breeze, as fleeting and insubstantial as their resolve. It was a meeting of shadows, conspiring against the burgeoning life that had taken root. In the quiet moments, I reflected on the nature of rebellion. It was not always loud and fiery. No, sometimes it was a seed, planted with care and tended with patience. It was the slow, steady growth of something beautiful and undeniable. My garden had become a testament to this truth, each bloom a silent act of defiance. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, I stood amidst my garden. The air was alive with potential, the promise of change woven into the very fabric of twilight. I wrapped myself in this certainty, knowing that even in the face of disapproval, life would find a way. Karen could rail against the tides, but the waves would not cease. The bees would continue to dance among the flowers, the butterflies would flit from petal to petal, and my garden would remain a vibrant testament to resilience. In the end, nature had its own ways of balancing the scales. And I, a simple gardener, stood ready to witness it all unfold. The morning sun peeked over the horizon, casting a golden hue over my freshly anointed pollinator habitat. The garden, once a battleground of clashing visions, now stood as a testament to nature's quiet resilience. Bees danced lazily between blossoms, their industrious hum a symphony of triumph. Butterflies flitted like living confetti, celebrating victories unseen by human eyes. It was as if the earth itself had decided to side with me, rewarding perseverance with a vibrant tapestry of life. Karen's opposition had felt insurmountable, a mountain of red tape and scornful glances. Yet here, amidst the whispering leaves and soft earth, her power seemed to wither. The HOA, with its newfound certification, had embraced an unexpected rebirth, one that sparked curiosity rather than conflict. Residents began to linger by the garden, curiosity morphing into appreciation as they watched nature unfold its quiet miracles. Children, once scolded for muddy shoes, now marveled at the transformation. Their laughter mingled with the garden's rustling secrets, a harmony that promised a new era. Parents, initially wary, soon followed, their guarded expressions softened by the garden's gentle persuasion. Conversations shifted from property lines and regulations to the beauty of compromise and coexistence. Karen, however, remained a stubborn outpost of resistance. Her presence loomed large, a shadow eclipsed by the garden's thriving light. She watched from her porch, posture rigid against the tide of change. Her carefully curated world, one of pristine lawns and rigid order, was crumbling at the edges. I could sense her discontent, a palpable tension that crackled like electricity. No words were exchanged between us, but the garden spoke volumes. Its vibrant proclamation was a silent rebellion against her severity. Nature, I realized, was the ultimate diplomat, brokering peace in a language older than any rule book. It was my ally, my silent advocate in a community learning to breathe anew. The irony was not lost on me. Karen's fervent opposition had inadvertently sown the seeds of her own isolation. Her attempts to control had backfired, leaving her stranded on an island of her own making. The community, once polarized, had found common ground in the unlikeliest of places. A garden. I wandered through the garden, fingers grazing petals and leaves, each touch a reminder of the journey here. The air was sweet with the scent of triumph and transformation. I paused at a bed of wildflowers, their colors a jubilant shout against the past's monochrome. It was here, in the heart of nature's embrace, that I felt the weight of Karen's resentment finally lift. The garden, now a testament to collaboration and growth, was more than I had envisioned. It was a living, breathing entity that had woven itself into the fabric of our lives. And as I stood there, I realized that Karen's absence at the community's heart was not a loss, but a space for something new to flourish. In the end, Karen had been sidelined not by force, but by choice, by a community that chose to listen to the whispers of the earth, to embrace the messy beauty of change. And as the sun bathed the garden in its warm embrace, I knew that we had all been transformed, not just by the garden, but by the quiet power of nature herself.